Hello and welcome to the Game Theory Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Vicini. We're powered by CLNS Radio. We would really appreciate it if you would rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast here, the Game Theory Podcast. Here on the show today, we are doing a post-lottery show. Literally just ended 5 minutes ago. And I've got Chris Stone from over at the Step Back to join me. How's it going, Chris?
It's going pretty well. That was pretty fun.
Yeah, that was pretty amazing. So let's just kind of to set the scene for what we're going to talk about here. We've got the Celtics at number 1, keep the number 1 overall pick. The Lakers get number 2. The Suns drop down from 2 to 4. The Sixers get number 3 from the Kings pick, which was invoked in the infamous Nick Stauskas, Carl Landry, Jason Thompson swap. What was that, 2015, I believe, when Vlade just took over. And then number 3, is the Sixers. Number 4 is the Suns. We've also got Philadelphia with their own pick. Immediate reaction, Chris. Let's just start there.
I think the most immediate thing that pops out to me is that I really have no idea what the Sixers are going to do at number 3. I feel like the top 2 picks are relatively settled in terms of Markelle Fultz, and I assume the Lakers will take Lonzo Ball. But with Philadelphia at number 3, I think it could go any number of directions, and that's, I think, where things start to get interesting.
Yeah, I would agree with you. So let's kind of start here. It's my opinion that the Celtics will take Markelle Fultz. Every indication out of that front office, says that they will probably value Markelle Fultz over Lonzo Ball. It's never set in stone until they get both of those guys in for workouts. And to be honest, if I was Boston, I would be sending out smoke screens. I'd be telling people, hey, we really like Lonzo. We might take Lonzo, to maybe try and convince the Lakers to move up to number 1 to take Lonzo. You get something a little bit extra to just move down to number 2 and take the guy that you want anyway. So that kind of stuff wouldn't really surprise me. Am I right?
Yeah, I certainly think that that's something that I would do if I was their front office. I mean, I would keep it under wraps as long as possible and make it seem like I have interest in other players in order to maximize my opportunities at landing Fultz and anything else that could come along with it, especially with a new front office in place for the Lakers. Yeah,
for sure. And, Magic Johnson, I think that he's a pretty sharp guy from everything we've seen so far. Obviously has incredible business sense, has a lot of savvy. He is a first-time general manager, first-time president of basketball operations, I should say. So who knows? Maybe you could get something out of that. But nonetheless, I don't think that any of this is going to go down. I think that ultimately the Celtics are going to take Markelle at 1. The Lakers are going to take Lonzo at 2. The draft starts at number 3. And honestly, I kind of think that this was the optimum spot for us to just get a crazy, chaotic draft. Just get Lonzo and Markelle out of the way early and have Philadelphia start the draft at 3 and just try and figure out who they're going to take, because I honestly don't know what they're going to do. For me, that tier, it's Markelle in the first tier, and then that next tier is Lonzo Ball, Jason Tatum, Josh Jackson. And then I think that De'Aaron Fox is pretty close to that tier, but maybe not necessarily. And plus, De'Aaron Fox obviously has the shooting issues that I'm not sure you necessarily want to mesh with guys like Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid and everyone else that they have in their organization right now. So what is your initial kind of reaction to the Sixers picking at 3 and 5? Do you think that they could just go wing there and then take your point guard at 5 and see who falls?
Well, he can't take 5, right? That's a swap with the Kings.
Oh, 5.
Right?
I'm sorry, swap with the Kings.
Kings are 5s. Yeah. But I still don't know what I think the best move for the Sixers is, because of all of the people that you just named in that next tier, I don't love the way that any of them fit with Philadelphia, right? Josh Jackson, I think, obviously has the shooting problems, and he's going to play off the ball a ton, with Simmons being kind of the ball-dominant guy there. De'Aaron Fox has similar problems, and I think you kind of maximize his weaknesses, obviously, by playing him away from the ball, and you minimize his strengths by taking the ball out of his hands. Jason Tatum seems like the most logical fit in terms of maybe somebody who can space the floor a little bit, assuming that we project that the jump shot comes along. But even he seems like a weird fit, because he's somebody you're going to want to put the ball in his hands quite a bit too, if he's going to reach kind of the top end of his potential. So I don't know that I love anybody there. I think in that situation, I might just take the best player available, whoever that is on their board. For me, that would be Josh Jackson, and just try to figure it out. But I think that the Sixers, for all of the ways that this draft, I think, could have gone right for them on lottery night, I really don't like where they ended up.
Yeah, neither do I. Not only did the Lakers pick not transfer, and now they get it in 2018 unprotected, which is, looking like a really strong draft, but they end up at number 3, and that's kind of a tough spot for them, like for many of the reasons that we've talked about. For me, I think that they almost have to go guard here, given the fact that this is their only pick this year. The reason I say that is that you only have a finite amount of chances to get a really good guard, right? In next year's draft class, for all its kind of discussion of how strong it's shaping up, right? A lot of the guys that we talk about aren't guards, right? Like next year's point guard class isn't necessarily elite. It is, Michael Porter, it's DeAndre Ayton, it's Mohamed Bamba, it's Luka Doncic, who, Luka Doncic is a guy who can handle the ball a lot and could profile as a lead ball handler, kind of, but he's still like a 6'7", like, kind of almost a 2-3 right now, who can handle the ball a lot. Like, he's not necessarily going to be your point guard of the future. So if I'm the if I'm the Sixers here, I think you almost have to go point guard. And I understand that De'Aaron Fox is probably going to be the best point guard available, and he's not necessarily a great fit for what they want to do. But in that case, I look at Dennis Smith and consider Dennis Smith there and just say, you know what, if Dennis Smith hits, he has just as high an upside as Markelle Fultz, maybe a little bit lower. But, we're willing to take that chance,
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense in terms of just rolling the dice out there, because I think, for as much as people emphasize taking the best player available no matter what, and I still think that's probably what I would do here, I do think fit is super important, because you have to put together, it's not just one player, it's a team. Those players interact in certain ways.
Yep.
And you need to put players in their best position to succeed. And I'm not sure that taking someone like Fox or Jackson or Tatum puts those players in their best positions to succeed, and therefore I'm not sure it puts the Sixers in the best position to succeed.
And so to be honest, do you think that Dennis Smith does, if you take Dennis Smith?
Well, of the players that are in that range, maybe. I mean, you certainly, I think, would like to have Smith with the ball in his hands more often, right? I don't think that puts Dennis Smith in the best position to be the best Dennis Smith possible, but in the position that the Sixers are in, it might put the Sixers in the best position to have their best roster possible. Does that make sense?
Well, the wild card here is, do you just take Malik Monk then? Like, do you just say, okay, fuck this, we're taking Malik Monk, we're going to let Ben Simmons legit be our point guard, and then we just have this insane scorer on the wing who can shoot the shit out of it? Yeah,
and I actually like that fit a ton, because I think, you can have Monk play in a de facto point guard role where he's defending opposing point guards, which mitigates some of the size problems that he has.
Yep.
So I actually like that fit a lot, and I don't, there's a chance if I were doing a Sixer-specific big board that it would go Fultz, Ball, Monk, just in terms of who might fit the best there. But that just seems like a reasonable reach. Maybe you try to trade down and take Monk if you can find a suitor. But
so, do you think the Kings maybe could move up to make sure that they get De'Aaron Fox?
Yeah, the Kings could move up. Maybe you just swap with the Suns and convince the Suns that you're going to take a wing. But the Suns would probably be totally fine with either taking Tatum or Jackson and just letting that ride. So you might even have to go further down the board than that.
Exactly.
And that just starts to get tough.
It gets really tricky, man. Like, it's not an easy solution here for the Sixers. I think that they almost are just going to be best off taking who they think is best on their board, unless they're willing to move all the way down to I guess maybe 6 or 7, if you can convince Orlando to move up, maybe you move down to 6. Sacramento takes, Orlando takes a point guard probably, or maybe a wing or something. Phoenix definitely takes the remaining wing. Sacramento takes De'Aaron Fox, hopefully, and then at 6 you end up with Malik Monk, and maybe you can take on someone like Mario Hezonja, and something else, something like that.
Yeah, I think that, that's your ideal situation. It really is a tough spot for the Sixers to end up with the third pick there. Obviously Joel Embiid was super happy when he found out the Kings were in the top three, and that guaranteed the Sixers a top three pick. Mm-hmm. But I really think hitting up at 3 puts them in a really tough spot unless the Celtics or the Lakers do something, unexpected and snag somebody else, and I just don't see that happening.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. To be honest, right now, if I was them, I think I probably take Malik Monk. I think I just go for it.
Yeah. There's certainly, I think, a compelling case there. I wonder if the Hinkie fan base would get pretty upset by that, given that Monk is almost certainly not the best player on the board at that point, but he really does just fit the team kind of perfectly.
Yeah, I agree with that. So number 4, Phoenix is going to take one of Josh Jackson or Jason Tatum. I think that's kind of set up perfectly for them, right? Like, this is exactly what they could have hoped for, I would think. And I would imagine they probably want Josh Jackson to fall there more than anyone. And if that happens, I think that Jason Tatum's a really good fit in Sacramento as well, especially now that Rudy Gay has kind of opted out of his contract for next year and will be heading elsewhere. I kind of like the way this entire thing is set up a little bit, depending on what, for everyone but Philadelphia, essentially in the top 5.
Yeah, I think I agree. It works out really well for the Suns, who know that probably 2 point guards are going to come off the board with the first 2 picks, and that leaves 2 wings left, and they can take their pick of whichever one is there or whichever one they have rated higher if they're both there. And I think that makes a ton of sense. It fits a position of need and matches with the best player available. The Kings then probably take the other person unless, I guess, they decide, to pass on one of those wings and take a point guard maybe. Mm-hmm. But I agree that I like the Jason Tatum fit in Sacramento just to fill that Rudy Gay role. Mm-hmm. I think that's probably one of his worst case scenarios if he ends up to be a player like that, and there's a lot more upside there that could potentially be untapped.
Yeah. All right. Before we get into the rest of the lottery here, and maybe the way to go about this is we'll try and do like a little mock draft thing where we go through the 14 picks here and then just sign off after like 35, 40 minutes of this podcast. But what do you think of the lottery in general? Like, is it an event that you enjoy watching? Because there was kind of a lot of discussion about that, right?
Yeah, I thought it was awesome.
Yeah, me too.
I'm a huge fan of the lottery. I think it's hysterical. One of my favorite parts is when they pan over all of the people who are there for their picks. And most of them just look like totally depressed to be there. Like Frank Vogel looked like he's had a really rough go of it, grew out the beard, and just like didn't know why he had to be at the office today. And then
Dave Yeager looks so angry.
Yeah, with the little graphic that was like Sacramento has a 0.0% chance at number 1. And it was just like, man, the definition of futility right now is on the screen. And then like, I would like to petition Joel Embiid to be at the lottery, even if the Sixers are not in it, because he was fantastic.
Yes.
Like, shooting the death stare at Magic Johnson and basically just telling Magic that he was coming for the pick was fantastic. The celebration after the Kings announcement was awesome. Like, I think it's a great event. Super fun to watch, very enjoyable. I like that some fan bases are having an awesome time with it. Like, it's a really fun event.
Yeah, let's shout out Mike Levin and Spike Eskin for what is genuinely looking like a goddamn cult at the Xfinity Live Center in Philadelphia. The Rights to Ricky Sanchez lottery party grows every year, and they literally hung a Sam Hinkie banner tonight. Like, what are we even talking about? I love it. I mean, it's just insane. But beyond that, yeah, I agree with you 100%. Every single like weird fan base that's like at the lottery and like every representative that's at the lottery it's hilarious to me. Like, you had Magic Johnson dancing whenever they had or kept the top 3 pick. You had Joel Embiid sending death stares. Like, Wick Grossbeck was obviously super excited, and then you had like people that were there that clearly just got sent by their owners just because no one else wanted to do it. I remember a few years ago, you had Machine Gun Kelly, like, with Nick Gilbert for the Cavs.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
It's just a hilarious event to me. It's a weird event to watch, and I wish that ESPN would have done a slightly better job producing it, maybe. Maybe
Sure.
do the lottery a little bit earlier. I'm not going to name any names, but there was one person on that telecast that was not particularly good, that I think got enough hate on Twitter for the entirety of what we're talking about here, and we don't really need to name names. But nonetheless, it's just a fun event. Like it just seems like an event where it's super laid back, and that's ultimately what you want from something like this. You just want a chill event that's going to be a good time.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons everybody likes sports. It's odd because obviously some of these things are franchise-changing decisions that are happening on the bounce of ping pong balls, but like you said, It seems like a lighthearted environment where people can actually enjoy themselves and have some fun. I feel like we should also mention it was our first opportunity to see Josh Jackson in cornrows, which follows the long line of Andrew Wiggins and Kawhi Leonard, which is awesome, and I'm very here for it.
Yeah, very here for that as well. You kind of mentioned the idea of, franchises being altered on ping pong balls. I mean, what do you think of just the lottery process in general?
I mean, it's a little ridiculous because I think that there are some valid arguments against tanking that it influences pretty significantly. Yeah. And I think that there are also some valid arguments for, we probably shouldn't have the draft and should just let people sign where they want, in favor of, kind of letting the labor make their decisions. But in terms, I guess, of how they do it, I don't know that that's going to change anytime soon. So it doesn't really bother me in that sense. It doesn't seem like anybody's enticed to change the rules in order to prevent tanking.
Yeah, right. Like, if anything, the draft is going to get longer. It's not going to get shorter, right? As we have these two-way contracts, it's not like this thing is going away anytime soon. Generally, I wish that the worst teams had a better chance to win, I would say. And I know that I say that on a night where the number one overall team that had, the best chances to keep the pick ended up keeping the pick, and the Lakers ended up keeping their pick. I just kind of wish that it was more than a 1 in 4 chance for the best teams. If we really want a league that has true parity, we should probably just be letting the teams that need the help the most get the help.
Yeah, I mean, the counter to that, obviously, right, is that teams could just intentionally tank to put themselves in the best position there, and by, after the All-Star break or whatever, maybe you have half the league's teams who are just rolling out total garbage lineups in order to get to that position. And so I'm not sure that it would be the truest measure of who the best and worst teams are necessarily, but I agree that it makes sense to have, or could make sense, I guess, to give those teams some higher odds just to, in the long term, even out some parity or rotate the teams a little bit.
Yeah, look, here's the thing. Have you seen basketball after the All-Star break as it is? It's just bad. It's bad now, let alone, some people want to make it so that, all of these teams, have a lower chance to win the lottery, and I'm just no. I still don't think that's going to stop anything, because ultimately the draft is the easiest way for a lot of these small market teams to compete, and they're still going to try and tank even if the odds are as low as they possibly are, right? I don't think that making the odds worse is going to stop tanking.
Yeah, probably not, because there's still, unless you just make them equal, right, there's still an incentive to do it. And so no matter, let's say you gave the top team a 15% chance of being the number one pick or whatever, there's still an incentive, assuming that percentage is higher than the other ones.
But say that you even made it everyone had equal odds to be in the top 3, and you still made it so that the number one team couldn't fall lower than 4. I still feel like there's going to be tanking, right? There's still going
so that you can stay in the top 4,
right? Yeah. It's not that's still going to be the easiest way for you to get a top 5 talent in the NBA draft versus not having a top 5 level talent. So I don't know, to me, I think we should go the opposite way. I guess I would rather it be a situation where these teams have a better chance to get the number one overall pick, and Brooklyn to look even dumber for trading this first overall pick.
Yeah, that seems understandable.
Yeah. All right, let's move on. Let's talk about a quick little mock draft here in terms of the way that we have this thing going down right now. So with number 1, I think we're both going to say Markelle, right? Number 2, we're going to say Lonzo.
I agree.
Okay, so Markelle with Boston, there's obviously the Isaiah Thomas concern. Does that bother you at all?
No, not really. Honestly, I think that if I were Boston, and this might make some Boston fans mad, I would probably draft Fultz and trade Isaiah. Because if you sign Isaiah to a long-term contract, he's not going to be very good at the end of that contract, and that's going to put you in a tough position. And I don't think that your team, unless you make some like crazy drastic changes, is going to be in a position to compete in the Eastern Conference with the Cavs for the next couple of years. And so perhaps by the time you're ready to compete for an Eastern Conference title or an NBA title, I don't know that the time frame of Isaiah's contract really matches with
where
that
you are.
time frame. Yeah.
Ultimately, I think it matters what happens in free agency, right? Like if they get Gordon Hayward and they can then get Paul George like via trade, because I still don't think anyone is going to offer the Pacers something better than the 2018 likely to be first overall odds for the number 1 pick, Jaylen Brown and Marcus Smart. Like, do you think anyone's topping that offer?
No, probably not.
Yeah, so like if you can get Gordon Hayward, you can get Paul George. That's a legit contender next year, and you probably keep Isaiah in that situation, right?
Sure. Yeah,
but if you can't get something like that, then yeah, I agree. I would probably move Isaiah because I don't think they're beating Cleveland next year. I just don't think that's going to happen until we see LeBron slow down, which hasn't happened now in 13 goddamn years. There's no reason to expect it. So I think that Boston's goal right now should be trying to extend its timeline out as long as possible, unless something drastic happens this summer.
Yeah, I think that has to be their plan, and that seems to be the direction that their front office has been trending in. And I think that would put Boston, in a difficult position to have to explain why they're doing what they're doing. But at the end of the day, like obviously taking Fultz is going to put them in a bind in terms of making some decisions. But those are tough decisions that have to be made. Yeah,
they want to be the next team after Cleveland.
Right.
Like, they don't want to, like, they would love to win a title now, but it's realistically unrealistic to, be competing with Cleveland right now. And I know that people are going to be like, they were the number 1 seed. Like, what are you talking about? But come on. Like,
yeah,
Cleveland is ridiculous, and they're going to win this series against Boston. It's fine. Like, we can just call it what it is.
Yeah, I mean, it's LeBron. You don't have LeBron. It's like DeMar DeRozan said, right?
Yeah.
If we had LeBron, we would win, but we don't, so here we are.
Yeah, exactly. So the Lakers at number 2, Lonzo Ball. What do we think of Lonzo in L.A.? I mean, there's obviously the fit here with D'Angelo Russell. Good fit, bad fit. What do you think?
It's a fit that I like, actually. Not necessarily in terms of its defensive potential, because I think it's probably going to be kind of a disaster on that end.
It's fascinating defensive pairing to me for
a
lot of reasons.
You're gonna have to do some work, but if Luke Walton is really set on bringing some of the principles of the Warriors offense to Los Angeles, I think that having 2 point guards, both with good size to fit in that system and both good passers, is a really awesome setup for their offense. It's one that I really like. In terms of what they could potentially do when it comes to scoring the ball.
I love it. Offensively, you can play Lonzo off the ball a little bit. He's not a guy who's going to pound the ball, so it's a perfect fit with D'Angelo. Defensively, I think they're going to be able to do some interesting things, right? Because Luke Walton's preferred system is he just wants to switch everything. So they're going to be able to close games now with like Lonzo, D'Angelo Russell, Brandon Ingram, and Julius Randle, and then basically whatever else they want to close with. They can close with a true big. They can close with a wing. Like, whatever they want to close with now, they can close with. And it's going to create a lot of really versatile lineups defensively, I think.
Yeah, I think that that's certainly true. They'll be able to switch everything. If anything, I guess maybe you want to try to fit a rim protector in there just because Ball and Russell aren't exactly the fleetest of foot in terms of staying in front of people.
Right.
But I think it's an intriguing fit. college basketball has seen this transition to 2-point guard offenses, and I've kind of been curious if that's one of the things that might make its way up to the NBA, whereas most trends tend to come down from the NBA, and I think it would be a fun experiment.
Well, I mean, the three-pointer has been coming up from college basketball. I mean, college basketball has been shooting a higher percentage of three-pointers for years. Really, I don't know what it was this year. I would imagine it's closing in on being pretty equal now. But, yeah, I mean, it's a fascinating thing. I mean, I'm a big fan of 2-point guard offenses in general, especially in the college game, and I think that it's going to work really well for the Lakers because they have 2-point guards that are 6'5" or taller, and that's a really important thing. Philadelphia, did we kind of talk ourselves into Malik Monk, or are you going to go a different direction?
Yeah, let's just roll the dice on Malik Monk, and I don't know that it's my favorite selection, but, it fits well.
Elite level shooter, elite level scorer.
Yeah, I mean, it allows you to build your core in the way, kind of together and in the same timeline. It's not my favorite pick, but I think it's the one that makes the most sense, and you really need shooting if you're going to play both Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid at the same time.
Yep. So Phoenix, Josh Jackson at 4?
Yep.
Okay, Josh Jackson's a really good fit there, I think. They have enough shooting with Devin Booker, and Eric Bledsoe's become a decent shooter. Marquise Chris can step out a little bit. Dragan Bender eventually is going to be a three-point shooter. It's kind of a perfect fit because, the one thing they kind of need right now is just like a motherfucker competitive dude, and Josh Jackson's going to be that. That's for sure.
Yeah, I was going to say, if there's somebody in this draft who won't let Marquise Chris continually miss defensive assignments, it'll be Jackson.
Yeah, for sure.
That dude will get after him and try to force him to play defense as much as he can, and I think that seems really useful for a team like that because, they're young and perhaps not the most mature, and Jackson is somebody who I think can step in and fill a leadership role like that pretty easily.
Yeah. All right, so number 5, we've got Sacramento. What do you do here? I think I go Jason Tatum personally, but that's because I have Tatum at number 2 on my board. I can see a couple of different ways to go here.
Yeah, I would probably lean Tatum. I think that you can make an argument for the Kings taking a point guard, either Dennis Smith or De'Aaron Fox, and just putting themselves in the position to have a lead guard of the future because you don't necessarily get a ton of opportunities to do that.
Yeah.
But I think Tatum makes quite a bit of sense, especially if they're in a position where they have to find somebody who's going to be the next guy. And maybe Dennis Smith is that person. I don't necessarily know that I think De'Aaron Fox is that guy, but I think Tatum could be that guy if he develops some of his facilitating instincts and becomes a more willing passer. So I'd probably go Tatum.
Yep. Number 6, Orlando. Oh, boy. So I have De'Aaron Fox as my highest rated point guard. I am not a believer in Elfrid Payton, so that's the direction I would be going. If you're Orlando, though, do you really want to take another non-shooter?
Yeah, I was going to say, after the Elfrid Payton experiment, and I guess, after 3 years, we shouldn't necessarily say that experiment is over, but I agree that I am not much of a fan. Do you really want to risk it on not having a point guard who can shoot and all of the difficulties that come along with that? Plus, you're going to play Aaron Gordon a ton of minutes, not exactly a knockdown shooter. I think that this is a debate between Fox and Smith, and I would assuredly take a point guard here. I would probably lean Smith instead of Fox, just because I like Smith a little bit more in terms of his potential upside. But I think either of those would be fine picks, and I think that they would certainly take a point guard.
I'm cool deferring to you and going Smith here.
Cool.
I think I would probably personally take De'Aaron Fox just because I have De'Aaron Fox higher, but I'll defer to Smith here. I think that's just an understandable pick after their years of point guard malaise. Number 7, Minnesota's just the best pick in the draft to me if this guy falls.
I would snap Jonathan Isaac.
So fast. Would run to the podium. I have Jonathan Isaac number 5 on my board. He's the perfect fit defensively between Karl Towns and Andrew Wiggins. Just cannot imagine someone better to cover their problems.
Yeah, if I were trying to think of my favorite fits in the draft just in terms of player with team within a realistic range where they could get them, Isaac would probably be one of the top 2 fits. Lonzo in Philadelphia maybe would be higher for me. But Isaac in Minnesota is terrific. He has a ton of length, plays the stretch 4 position. allows you to put Towns at his more natural center position. I just think it's an excellent fit and would be a boon for Minnesota if they're able to get him at 7.
The only question I have about that is how Jonathan Isaac would mesh personally with Tibbs. Isaac kind of, not a competent player yet in his own mind, but maybe the fact that he defends and really gives a shit on that end would work well with Tibbs. It's a question, though, in my mind in terms of, is this going to be a great personal fit in terms of personality for them?
Yeah, I understand that one, but there were some similar, I think, concerns about how Wiggins would fit. I remember when Wiggins was coming out of Kansas, there were a lot of conversations about how Self is a pretty rough and tumble coach, and I think had to kind of bring the softer hands with Wiggins because he's someone who needs that encouragement. And it seems like, from what I've read at least, that Wiggins and Tibbs have established a pretty good relationship. So I think that there's some understandable concern there, but I think that they've guided their way through a similar path before.
Yeah. So the Knicks now, they run to the podium and take De'Aaron Fox without thinking, right?
Yeah, 100%. Unless there are a few reports out there, right, that they really like Frank Ntilikina, but I would De'Aaron Fox without question.
Yeah. So Dallas at 9. What do you do if you are Dallas?
So the real options here, right, are Ntilikina and Markkanen, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, do you consider Zach Collins here maybe? But, you already have Nerlens Noel, who you're likely building around at center. They're both true centers. I don't really believe in Collins playing much of the 4 personally.
I hate that idea.
Yeah, so I would probably take Lauri Markkanen and just hope he's your next Dirk and go from there. And plus I know that Rick Carlisle knows how to utilize those guys. It's a question, though. Yeah.
I get Markkanen's fine with me. I think I might lean Ntilikina and just trust Carlisle to develop a point guard, but I totally understand taking Markkanen, so we can go with Markkanen.
Yeah.
Let's do that.
So Frank Ntilikina then at 10, probably?
Yeah, and give the Kings the point guard that they didn't take at 5.
Yeah. And honestly, I'm not sold that Ntilikina is a point guard, by the way.
Yeah, I agree.
He's not the most athletic guy. He's still very skinny. I think he's going to continue to put on athleticism and explosiveness as he puts on muscle and puts on weight. But it's a question right now. Is he a good enough athlete to consistently break down defenses and get into the paint? He's a really, really good defender, though. Can shoot the ball now over the last year in France. He's really developed in that way. I would like that. I wouldn't love it, but I would like it.
Yeah, I think it'd be all right. And I think you hope that his top-end outcome, right, is that he can be your point guard, and if he's not your point guard, that he can be this kind of really versatile 3-and-D shooting guard kind of guy.
Yeah. So Charlotte at number, I think both of us have Zach Collins at number 11, right?
I do, and I had some people get really mad on Twitter last week for having Zach Collins there, but I think it makes a ton of sense.
You think Charlotte makes sense there for Zach Collins?
Yeah.
Oh, God, I would love to hear this because I think there would genuinely be a revolt in Charlotte if they took another white 7-footer.
You don't like Zach Collins there?
I genuinely I think it would be fine, but I think there would be a fan revolt if Zach Collins went number 11 to Charlotte after they've taken white big man after white big man.
There was certainly a fan revolt in my mentions. They were not happy. Although the couple of people who responded, one was a Wake Forest fan, I think, who wanted John Collins, and one was a North Carolina fan who wanted Justin Jackson. So take that for what you will. I was waiting for the Duke fan to chime in for Tatum or Kennard, but I think I would take Zach Collins and he's the highest rated player I have on my board. And I don't love OG Anunoby there because they have a decent number of the stretch 4 types. Feels repetitive with Michael Kidd-Gilchrist, for example.
Yeah. Oh boy, I think I would probably take Luke Kennard if I was them.
Okay.
I have Luke Kennard at 12 on my board. They really just need offensive creators, I think. And we've seen over the years that Steve Clifford just can get a strong defense together with Scotch tape. So I think that Kennard would work there. He'd be really interesting in the way that he might allow Kemba Walker to kind of play off the ball a little bit, maybe. You could put the ball in Luke Kennard's hands. You could have Kemba kind of play off the ball. You could run all kinds of crazy like wing pick and roll options with both him and Nick Batum on the roster. I like the idea. I do like Luke Kennard there. I don't know that they would take him there. I think that they would probably lean Justin Jackson, given the Michael Jordan ties and everything. What do you want to do here with this pick? Because I'm not gonna say Zach Collins, because I genuinely think that like Rich Cho would not leave draft night alive.
Yeah, we can go with Luke Kennard. I like Luke Kennard a whole bunch, so I'm totally fine with shooting a shot and putting him at 11. I really like him.
Well, here's the thing, though. Do we realistically think they would take Kennard over Justin Jackson?
Probably not. I mean, I don't know that Michael would pull that trigger.
Yeah. You know what?
Let's just not
overthink it, though. Let's just go Luke Kennard at 12.
Sorry,
11,
Michael.
11, I'm sorry. Number 12, we have Detroit. Oh, boy. This one's really tricky because they already have Andre Drummond, right? So Does that make a whole lot of sense? Probably not. Could they use a 4 maybe? Could they use a John Collins?
Maybe. I think I'd just take Justin Jackson.
Yeah, for what it's worth, I have Justin Jackson at 17 on my board. Like, I'm not low on him. I'm not high on him. I feel like, I'm not sold on him being like worthy of a lottery. I don't think he's going to be like this, like third or fourth best player on your team. But
no,
I guess at 12, you're just kind of hoping, right? Like you're hoping that ends up being the highest possible outcome.
And I mean, like 6'8" wing who can definitely score. Probably plays. I was impressed a little bit with his defense in the NCAA tournament.
I agree.
More so than I had been the rest of the season. Some of that might have been guarding smaller players and kind of putting himself in an advantage against those players, but there's not anyone who I love as a fit here, so I think I would just probably take Justin Jackson and hope it works out.
Yeah, and for what it's worth, Detroit this year, they shot 33% on three-pointers. They need someone to space the floor. They took the 5th fewest three-pointers this season in the entire NBA. Justin Jackson really fits there because he's going to knock down shots. Like you said, he's a long, lengthy defender. I think that kind of works.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and lock him down at 12. Number 13, Denver. Again, I think that we are not going to go Zach Collins here.
I agree.
Just because Nikola Jokic and now Mason Plumlee, who they gave up both Nurkic and a first-round pick for, I mean, I think it's pretty clear that they're going to keep him in the fold. So what do you do here? Because you don't go Jarrett Allen either. This is Anunoby, I guess, right?
Yeah, in the mocks that I've done for the last 2 months, I've had Anunoby here. I like the fit decently. I think that he brings a level of defense that they could really use and a level of athleticism that they don't really have. He's a super project offensively.
He might be the worst first-rounder offensively, and I'm not exaggerating when I say
so bad offensively.
He's not good.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess you just hope Jokic can pass him the ball and he run while he's running to the basket, he scores. I really don't know right now. If you put OG Anunoby on an NBA court on offense, I don't know what he would do. So
I guess that here's my question to you. Denver tends to run a lot of offense where Kenneth Faried, and this is something Adam Mares has written about pretty regularly, they end up with Kenneth Faried kind of in that 12-foot short corner range. And I think that Anunoby can probably play that role now, just have him take floaters from that range and dive to the basket around Nikola Jokic. That kind of makes sense to me, right?
Yeah, I think that you can find a way to use him, hopefully. I don't know that he's ready for it right now. The thing that would attract me if I were a Denver fan to Anunoby is the fact that you would be getting, assuming he fully recovers from his knee injury, an elite athlete who is a super versatile defender and can bring some rim protection and guard a bunch of different positions. And I think that that's super valuable. Yeah,
and that's exactly what they need. They specifically need that badly. All right, so next, let's go here to number 14, Miami. This is probably going to be Zach Collins for me. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean,
I guess best player available.
Yeah, I guess you just take the best player available, and even though you have Hassan Whiteside,
I mean, to be honest,
just take Collins.
Like, they don't have any other big man, right?
That's
like,
true.
They really don't have, like, who was their next best big man this year? Was it Willie Reed, maybe? Like, was he their second best big man? I mean, really, it was James Johnson playing that, like, small ball 4 role. But James Johnson's a free agent this year, and he's going to get paid. Like, James Johnson was awesome this year.
Yeah, and I guess the other argument in favor of Collins is that I'm not sure that there's anybody else on the board who I would consider really in a tier with him as a prospect.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not big on John Collins. I know you're higher on him than I am. Terrence Ferguson, to me, this seems way too high. Jared Allen, I would rather have Zach Collins. Maybe, I guess, Donovan Mitchell you could do.
Yeah, I mean, Mitchell would make a little bit of sense. He's long, he's athletic, can shoot a little bit. Yeah, Mitchell is a guy that would have success in their system because he's going to be able to switch. He's going to be able to really blitz guys. They really like to run that like scheme where if you get a guy that you can really trap and force off the ball and cause problems with in pick and rolls, they really like to do that, and it's really versatile and useful for them to have athletic guard defenders. So Mitchell would make sense, but I'm going to go Collins just because I think he has the most upside out of all of them. And in Miami, if this thing kind of goes south and they're not able to lure anyone in terms of free agency this summer, and they're in just kind of, I don't think they're going to stay in like a treadmill phase, right? Like, it wouldn't be crazy to me if they ended up like looking to deal Hassan Whiteside if they can't get anyone to go to Miami.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Let's go with Zach Collins. Maybe we just hope Donovan Mitchell falls to the Bucks because that's another personal favorite fit.
Yeah, that's a really interesting one too. I like that. We can go like, Portland to 15, Chicago 16, Milwaukee 17. We're not going to do that tonight, though. We'll do it on another podcast now that we have the official draft order. I'm sure that this will not be our last mock draft as we continue to gather information throughout the process. This is just obviously an early look at what has just happened. It just unfolded 40 minutes ago, right after everything happened here in the lottery in New York. So, final impressions here. I mean, we have Markelle Fultz, number 1 to Boston. Number 2, Lonzo Ball to the Lakers. Number 3, Malik Monk to Philadelphia. Number 4, Josh Jackson to Phoenix. Number 5, Jason Tatum to Sacramento. Number 6, Dennis Smith to Orlando. Number 7, Jonathan Isaac to Minnesota. Number 8, De'Aaron Fox to New York. Number 9, Lauri Markkanen to Dallas. Number 10, Frank Ntilikina to Sacramento. Number 11, Charlotte is taking Luke Kennard. Number 12, Justin Jackson to Detroit. Number 13, Denver taking OG Anunoby, and number 14, Miami taking Zach Collins. That reads out pretty well to me, to be honest.
Yeah, I think that works out just fine. There are some picks in there, obviously, where like Philadelphia, I think we're always going to be hung up on, but
and honestly,
for the positions,
if Philadelphia doesn't take Malik Monk, this whole thing goes to hell, and I think that that's a really interesting part of this draft process right now because, like I said on Twitter, I think that this draft kind of set up for optimum level chaos.
Yeah, I think 100%. It is totally in a position where after that number 2 pick, anything could go crazy.
Yeah, like Philadelphia could go genuinely, 5 different directions. They could take any of those next 4 guys. De'Aaron Fox, Malik Monk, Dennis Smith, Josh Jackson, Jason Tatum, or trade. So, there's just so much there.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, and they're going to keep it close to the vest as well. Chris, do you have anything that you have coming up over the next couple days that you want to plug?
Yeah, I think we're dropping a new big board tomorrow, and I'll put out a mock draft like I do every week on Thursday. So we'll get right into kind of the bulk of this draft stuff now that we have the official order.
Yeah, it's going to be a really fun next 5 or 6 weeks here. Keep it locked here at the Game Theory Podcast. We're going to start doing some team-specific draft boards. We're going to start doing some prospect breakdowns a little bit more in earnest here. So we're going to have some really good fun here on the show. Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe to the Game Theory Podcast. It really helps us move up in the ratings on iTunes and really helps get the word out about the podcast. So for Chris Stone over in Washington, D.C., this is Sam Vecini out here in sunny now Los Angeles with the Lakers keeping the number 2 overall pick. and we'll be back on Friday. So until next time, we'll talk soon. Bye.